Hey, hello, and welcome to the Event Marketers Toolbox. I am Chris Dunn with Blue Hive Exhibits. Hope everybody's having a great week. I have a couple of friends with us here today. We're going to have a great conversation with our friend Anders. But before we get to him, I'm going to kick it over to my co-host, Dana Esposito. Hey, Dana, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Doing good.
So I'm Dana Esposito. I'm the EVP of Strategy at Blue Hive Exhibits, and I've been in the industry about 30 years. Started off as exhibit designer, then creative director. So a lot of creative leadership and also corporate strategy. So today we're going to be talking to Anders. Anders, could you give us a little intro so everyone knows who you are?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Anders Boulanger. I'm founder and CEO of Engagify, and we create engagement at trade show booths. We either make your events more engaging or your teams more engaging. And we can talk a little bit about how I got there, maybe briefly, but that's kind of where we're at right now. And so we eat, sleep, and drink trade shows. I joke with one of my old clients where we were kind of feeling run down after a trade show. A lot of stuff happening, and I said, we got to tap into that passion. Like trade shows are life, like just like this, like Danny Roja from Ted Lasso. Football is life. Trade shows are life. So I do enjoy the engagement, the interaction, and all of that. So yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation today, a couple of things. First of all, this is a live show. We're here on the Toolbox. We're building a community of event planners, of trade show professionals, of people who do activations and other brand engagements. So hopefully jump into the chat. Let us know what's on your mind. Any kind of thoughts that kind of pop up, let us know where you're coming in from. Good questions we will work into our show. And Mr. Anders here will, show his adept ability to kind of adapt.
Think on the fly.
There you go. Kung Fu
try
trade
to
show
stump
master.
me. Yeah,
exactly.
No.
Stump the master.
Yeah.
So we have a couple sponsors that make this show possible. So Blue Hive, Dana and I work for Blue Hive. Blue Hive is a 20-year-old creative agency. We started in the Massachusetts, outside of Boston area. We've recently expanded within the last few years to open up our own brick and mortar footprint in Las Vegas. We are 110 people-ish. We kind of like to think that we are a right size for a lot of different types of companies, whether you're a well-funded startup or a large global enterprise. Really kind of the key point is we're really creative. Our customer service is excellent, and we make sure that you don't feel like a number. Our resources are a little deeper than a boutique, but we're not the big guys either. We're in that good space right there in the middle. In addition to Blue Hive, we are also sponsored by the group that is helping us produce this podcast. Fist Bump is an agency. Initially, my involvement with the founder, Brandon Lee, a couple of years ago was really kind of about creating better engagement on LinkedIn and personal brand and that stuff. And it led to discussions around like, hey, Chris, you guys would be a great candidate to have your own show. You get to be thought leaders. You get to, bring on these, great folks from your industry and have wonderful conversations, and that those conversations then become content. So we kind of went all in. This is show number 44. We are on Halloween Eve, 2025 here, and we're 44 shows in, having done one every single week. So we're super excited to talk to Anders to dive a little bit deeper. He's going to talk to us about how he got a start as a magician. And I'm going to kick it back to you, Dana, to take it away from here.
All right. So we know that your latest book is called Engage First. We talked about that a little bit. The latest book.
Yeah. It's my only book, people. But yeah, it's
a
I
long
just like
series.
It sounds better. It sounds better.
Yeah, your latest book.
My latest book.
Well, it's not wrong. I mean, it is your latest book.
Right, technically.
Yeah.
But so it's all about engagement. And of course, we always talk about that on the show hall floor or any live event. We want to be memorable. We want to educate. We want people to learn things. But so the word gets thrown around a lot, but Can you talk to us a little bit from your experience, what it really means to engage before you start educating or trying to sell or persuade someone, that journey?
Yeah. I mean, and just to kind of, like you said, the journey, we did tease that, I'm a magician, and I got started magic when I was very young. And then paid my way through university doing magic and conferences and corporate events. And then I started doing trade shows, and it was about merging the message that a company wanted with a unique form of entertainment. So we call it infotainment, right?
Mhm.
And so years of doing that on the trade show floor made me realize, like, the only reason people stop, is because I'm doing something engaging. And the only reason they stay is because, they remain engaged. And that's why they receive the information, right? Like it's very hard to, like there's so much information, so much knowledge, and knowledge is cheap now too, right? AI and Google something, whatever.
Right.
It's that communication, that's where the power lies, right? And so that's kind of what inspired me to write the book Engage First, because it doesn't matter what you know, if people aren't paying attention, who cares, right? So that it's also like the was it Mark Antony in Shakespeare's Caesar, right? Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, that kind of thing. Like we can't do anything until we have that. So and it's just found it funny to me that these skills that I learned when I was young have a higher and better use, really, because I'm able to stop people, entertain them. We spike that dopamine so that they see something's interesting happening. And I mean, the psychology and the safety of numbers, right? And crowds, the crowd dynamics, and it's very interesting that if you can just stop a few people, like 3 people is a magic number, I find. Like 3 people watching, it becomes a crowd.
Okay.
2 people, it's like just a conversation. It doesn't really, so you start getting that little bit of something happening. And then the bigger the crowd you get, the more people want to be around it, right? They feel like there's a fear of missing out, and there's social proof, and there's all these things that are psychologically, the safety in numbers click in. And so, all of that is really kind of, I find it interesting, the psychology of it, but that's really what a lot of this stuff is based on. And what I talk about in the book is, if we want people to be engaged with what we're doing in a trade show booth, we have to give them a reason to stop. We have to spike that dopamine. And a lot of times engagement, we kind of throw that term around where it's, gamification. Sometimes that's getting a little overused nowadays too, but different things where we throw that out. But I think engagement doesn't come from apps and technology. I think it comes from people at the end of the day, right? And so this is a face-to-face event, right? In industry. And as we see the generations change and people coming up, I feel like engagement skills are lacking. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book as well, is that, we don't have to see a bank teller anymore. We don't have to, we can check out, there's limited areas where we engage these days. And then some people just have grown up on their phones too. So it's we need to kind of not be head down and shut down, but we've got to be head up and lit up, and really create moments with people. And so, that's what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, some people are really good. They're very gregarious. They're very good at engaging with someone. Named Chris, you could talk to a stick. I mean, he's really good on.
I've been known
The
to do
first
that.
the first time we were at a trade show together, I walked up to him. I think he thought I was going to say something bad. I don't know why, because I'm like, "Do you have a second?" He's like, "Oh." I'm like, "I just wanted to say you're like really good at like just talking to strangers, like off. Like I'm not. Like I'm more introverted, but he's very gregarious. He's like a golden retriever, really. So
I have the same ability to focus as golden retriever.
that is so true. As a squirrel, Chris is not an into the details guy, but he's
No,
really good at talking for you all.
there we go.
Um,
I strong
so,
suit.
so like that beginning of engagement, or also, provoking human curiosity, that type of engagement as well. Talk to a little bit about how you were saying some people are better than others, or different generations, but talk a little bit how it's a currency within itself.
Yeah, very much so. That, I mean, it's again, that first engage first is the title of the book, and it comes so early, because otherwise everything's kind of a waste of breath. That first moment though, too, that like I always believe you got to have some contrast to the expectation, like a pattern interrupt, right? That, for example, one of the things that I do in my infotainment presentations is I give someone a chance to win $2,000 at the end of my presentation. So of course, I've got a fan of cash that I'm waving around, and then I throw it down on the floor. And then I kneel down on the floor and I start talking, and what happens is I just see footsteps like starting to stand around me, right? And I'm not talking to anyone in particular at this point. And so what's happening there is, first of all, when was the last time you saw $2,000 lying on the floor, right? So you go, what's going to happen?
Just this morning, as a matter of fact.
There's someone kneeling on the floor, which is weird too at a trade show. So it's like there's some things that are just not quite there. I'm talking on a microphone in a confident manner that something's going to happen. And so I'm so all of that is, I always think with trade shows, and this, Dana, I'm sure you can chime in on this too, that, when you have that contrast to what is expected, sometimes there's this, I call it the what the hell is this test, where people go, what the hell is this? But then there has to be relevance, right? It can't just stay out being weird, because then it's just weird.
Right.
But when people finally put the two together, right? They hear the message or the hook or the theme. Oh, that's clever. That aha moment, and it's what we call inductive learning, where they have to put it together themselves. It's not like on a silver platter, right? That little twist, people remember that more because they put it together. Right. So there's a lot of things in those, first few moments when people happen upon a trade show booth, that, if you check the right boxes, you're getting them to stop. Okay. And, which is what a lot of people focus on, is if we could just stop more people in the booth. Right. And, Chris, if it's okay right now, can we talk about engagement gap? Because this is just a good time.
Actually, before you do that, I kind of wanted to ask a couple of questions. So both Dana and I started in the mid 90s, right? And it was really kind of the norm in the earlier days of trade shows that there was a live presenter who was present, whether it be somebody, with like stage presence and skills, who was doing a kind of a teaching moment, or if there was somebody like yourself entertaining, a magician, somebody doing card tricks, whatever the case may be. That was a thing. And then with technology, really pushed a lot of that out. Everybody started leaning really heavy into big screens, monitors, and digital and all that, which is great. But I feel like we've seen the pendulum swing, both ways. Have you seen, I don't know exactly from your own personal timeline, but with regards to like the demand for things like you're doing, have you seen an increased demand as of late? And then I also want to kind of just ask about, you brought up different generational expectations and so forth. So when you're talking to boomers or Gen X people who are used to this kind of stuff versus millennials, maybe Gen Z now, folks, younger people on the show floor who are all about face in phone, what was your experience? Is the demand up for in person, and do you notice a difference with the different generations? I know it's a lot there, but take a crack at it.
Yeah. So in terms of demand, I found a huge demand coming out of COVID, because that's the thing that's most recent and most top of mind for me. It was like, let's get back to in person, right? And it was like, bang, we had a very busy year
all of a sudden,
once things opened up. Over the course of the doing trade shows at mostly, and I'm in Canada, but like when I started going to the US to do trade shows, which are on a bigger scale than they are in Canada, that's probably the last 14, 15 years. So I haven't detected, much in terms of kind of ebbs and flows in terms of that. But I do find it interesting what you talked about, going to the big screens, that, we're trying to engage senses, right? And the big screen, some of them are almost over the top, right? Where it's blinding, to that point. So, having people, we do connect with people. So I don't see it going away. So I kind of say steady right now. And then the generational question that you're asking, I think what we see is, yeah, I probably relate to the boomers and the Gen X more, just because that's, more my flavor, right? And kind of what I grew up performing for. But what we're seeing now is just a different reaction. Like a lot of the stuff that we do, and if you study engagement, we're wired to respond to certain things. So it's going to work, but maybe the feedback you get from it working is going to be a little bit different, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So whether or not people are as effusive, and this isn't even generational, this is like cultural, geographically, right? That you go to different places and people are just going to react differently to, how you are, right?
Mhm.
In Europe, it's a lot more of a laid back kind of thing, right? In terms of booth staff, it's just way more, hey, if they want to talk to me, they'll come to me, right? They're not as proactive as in the US, right? And so what we see sometimes is, a lot of Americans are taken to European shows, professionals, to work because the company is used to that kind of style and they want to go hard, if you will,
Yeah.
at the show. So generationally, I think everything's still working. It's just
Yep.
how it's interpreted is kind of like, you just might have to preface that in your mind, and it's not the same everywhere, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great insight. So yes, so you wanted to make the leap, and I totally put that little little boulder in the way. But the engagement gap, we talked about this, prior to going live here. But
Yeah.
walk us through this kind of model or concept, and how it relates.
Sure. So the engagement gap, I talk about it a little bit in the book, but it's really developed out into something that I do a presentation on it. And if you look on my LinkedIn feed or whatever, you'll see a whole video where I draw this up. But
Mhm.
it's the idea that there's a gap between two different parties, and it's kind of a perfect storm kind of thing happening. Okay.
Okay.
So on one, the attendees who are coming into the show, right? Who are the prospects, the people, if as an exhibitor who you want to attract to your booth, right? And first of all, they're coming and they are overwhelmed, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot at the show. If it's your first time to Las Vegas going to a trade show, my goodness, right? Are you in for a shock, right? Like
Yes.
just the sheer number of marketing messages, the lights, the big screens, everything, the smoke in the air, all of that. Okay. So they're overwhelmed. They are also don't have a lot of time. Maybe they're doing the concurrent sessions. Maybe they've got meetings previously booked. Maybe there's things pulling on them from at home, right? Like home life, that sort of thing. So I call it overbooked, but they're busy, right? They're overbooked, no time. And then the last piece of that on the attendee side is that they're often overlooked too. They're overlooked because booth staff maybe are just kind of doing their own thing, and let's flip over to the booth staff side of things, right? Like in the exhibit.
Mhm.
So you've got, we know there's certain percentages, like only 1% of companies train their booth staff with a third party, with a professional trainer. 49% of companies rarely or never train their booth staff. Okay, so they're untrained. And just from my side of the things too, because actually at Exhibitor Live, I do a training called How to Train Your Booth Staff.
Okay.
And one of the things is, even when they are trained, it's often the event manager just reading a list off their phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's more of a clipboard situation kind of thing, and not necessarily a training. And so a lot of those statistics, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, because it's like, is the training really, like, how do we define this, right? So they're untrained. They're sometimes unmotivated, right? Meaning just they're there for the show. Sometimes it's a vacation, going to Vegas, that sort of thing. And then in some cases, they're, unremarkable in a sense. So what we want to do is we want to take away the uns on that side. So we want to make them trained, we want to make them motivated, and we want to make them remarkable. Okay. So we want to bridge this gap so the attendees can get over to the booth. Okay. So that's what's happening. And so when I wanted to jump into this earlier, it's because we were talking about, we got to give them a reason to stop, right?
Yeah.
Traffic to the booth. And so giving them a reason to stop, we call it creating an undeniable draw. So what is that thing that makes people want to stop and take a closer look, or slow down, and just take it in. Okay. And that's really what we kind of get caught up in a lot in trade shows. We got the coffee, the free t-shirts, the whatever, the free everythings, right? Massages, all of that. And lots of times that whatever you're doing, it can just stop and end there. We talked about the relevance piece, Dana, before, right? We need to bridge into what the company does at one point, and we also need to earn the right to pitch. So the next bridge stone to bridge the engagement gap is giving people a reason to listen. Okay. And so this is the connection or the meaningful interaction side of things, right? And so if we can be very present with people, if we can give them attention, make them feel welcomed in the booth, right? And the idea that your booth is your home and you're going to be very hospitable to people who come, and join you there. All of a sudden now we're trying to make that transition and creating rapport with that person so that we're elevating the trust, elevating a comfort level there. Okay. And so that's the second step. So we need all three of these bridge stones. So the first one was giving them a reason to stop, the undeniable draw. We can't create connection unless they stop, right? They're sequential. Okay. And then the meaningful interactions, if we don't have that, well, then they stop and they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they take off, right? We never were able to connect to them. Okay. And then the third bridge stone that we talk about is about giving them a reason to buy. And this is what we call a memorable message. So this is where we're really we're building off of the connection of having them stop and the meaningful interactions. And now we're kind of working on the conversion, whether that is conversion to just a meeting, right? Conversion to them taking a closer look or taking it back to their teams, that sort of thing. So when we have that memorable message, what are we saying that is simple, concise? And Dana, we could talk about booth, the message on the booth, right? And having that be so clear and have clarity. And then the other side of it too is, how are we saying this in that memorable message? And when I say, how are we saying, what is the, are they seeing it? Are they hearing it? Is it on a video? Is it coming from your people? And how are those people delivering that message, right? Because what you say and how you say it carries a lot of weight, right? Mm-hmm. So when you get all three of those bridge stones aligned, and now those attendees can walk over that bridge into your booth and build those relationships that you can captivate and cultivate on the trade show floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm often saying to clients or even other designers, you got to remember that on the trade show floor, your client is competing with everyone else on the trade show floor. Everyone is like yelling as loud as they can be with visuals, with AV, with all sorts of things, with gimmicks, hopefully gimmicks that make sense, right? They tie back in some way. So you really need to think of your exhibit, not just you have to picture it there. You can't just, while you're designing it, just be looking at it naked, like on a page or on a screen. You have to think about the context of everything going around. It's a little bit of a circus. It's like organized chaos, right? So how are you going to stand out? How are you going to stand out not just on the trade show floor, but from your specific competitors? What's your most important message? Do people at the show already know you? Do they not know you? Is there something specific you want them to know that they don't know? And it's very easy for a client to be like, well, I want them to know this and I want them to know that. And it becomes with this long laundry list. It's like, that's great. But pretend you don't know you. Pretend you don't know who you are, who your company is. What's the shortest way for someone to know who you are, what you do, and your differentiating factor? Why should I work with you? Why do I care? Punch them in the face with the message, right? And start with that, punch in the face with the structure itself and the messaging and what the interactivity is. Make sure, I tend to swear a lot just because I'm a construction worker kind of girl. So I don't usually say what the heck is going on here? I'll be in a meeting and ask yourself, what the bleep, why should I stop here? What is going on? Mm-hmm. Because if your client doesn't know that right from the get-go, why are they going to stop? That they, like you said, their time is valuable and they're spread thin.
And I think the flow of that too, Dana, right? When you got all of these moving parts in the booth and all of these things they want and the long list you're talking about, when you're doing all of them at once, can that
Yep.
work? Do you
Yeah.
want that to work?
Right.
Is it more about here's probably where they're going to come, and then we upsell their time and attention to a deeper, richer booth experience, right? Like, what does that flow look like? Because, you know, sometimes people just try to throw everything at the wall
Yeah.
to see
And
what
it's too
sticks.
much. It's just too much. If you try to do everything, they'll see nothing. They'll hear nothing, and they'll walk away learning nothing.
And the path of least resistance is so critical in trade shows, right? And the idea that you ask them to do more than one thing, it confuses them and it just won't work, right? So it's like when we have a crowd of people around a trade show booth and we ask qualifying questions to see hand raises, to see, you know, what do we got here that's really kind of qualified, right? We're going to just ask them to, like, those people who just raise your hand, you're going to go over and talk to Lori over there. She's got a special gift for you, and we're going to show you what's next, you know. And then so that's all we want to do with that, right? Don't say, go check out this, go check out this, go check out, you know, it's
too
just
much.
just ask them to do one thing.
Like hit them over the head, like hit them over the head. You know,
There's
I was also
punching,
really
there's hitting over the head.
I
There's a
know.
lot of physical combat.
Yeah, you
and a lot
might
of
want to
cuss
seek
words,
therapy, Dana. Like,
I'm a small person, so I
She's
tend
very
to
angry.
be violent to, you know, take up some space. But Anders, I was very excited because a second ago I heard you say a boot. So I finally heard like some Canadian
did I say
accent.
it?
The
Okay.
Canadianism is out.
It was awesome.
Sometimes I
Like,
try to go
sure.
under the radar, you
Nope.
know, about,
Can't do
you
it.
know, and like
No.
roof.
Give me your best American accent there, Anders.
For sure.
I don't want to offend anyone here. No, I try to, but you know what? There are a lot of Canadian, you know, there in the US, sometimes Canadians for newscasters were sought after because there was a little bit more of a neutrality other than our little words that we tend to have a little Scottish influence or something over the years. Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, and here's another quick
French
thing.
sometimes, a little French.
Yes. So, you know, Michael J. Fox, when he was on Family Ties, we're going way back here. He was from Vancouver. He had to learn how to say, we say sorry, but he had to picture the wrap dress a sorry, right? Like, so every time he said, oh, sorry about that, right? Like that's little tricks, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about all of this, the engagement and stuff, but you'd also mentioned, and I wanted you to explain a little bit more about how it can instill trust and like how it can be like a catalyst for building trust.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about, I mean, first capturing their attention, and then that connection piece, that meaningful interactions, you know, that the rapport where, you know, I build rapport with a crowd of people, which has some other layers to it. But the idea that the more we are like, the more we like each other. And if we see ourselves in that other person, then we start trusting them inherently. Okay. Because of that. Right. And of course, you got to do what you say you're going to do. You know, you have to develop a little bit of a track record with people to really get that trust.
Absolutely.
But in that booth, you know, our body language, how we talk with the person, we're just talking about my accent, you know, but we do have to slow down if we're in a place that has a slower cadence, right? If we're talking too fast, there is a disconnect there. You're not going to build a rapport. And so a lot of these things, you know, I just love zooming in on it. I'm a bit of a nerd and I geek out about this stuff, but it's tough for people to think about all these things, right? Because
the science
you've got
behind
all your
human interaction.
And I mean, and that's you know, you got your own business to worry about and your own, you know, whether it's competitive decks or battle cards and the things that you got to worry about working a booth. But you know, when we can connect with people and really be present, I think it goes a long ways to building trust with people, and start that beginning of a relationship, you know, on the floor.
Yeah.
Let me jump in if I could, because when I think of somebody who does magic on a trade show floor, and then hearing everything that you've had to say here, like to me, you're like part salesperson, part psychologist, part expert marketer. Like you're packaging an awful lot into or under an umbrella that is magic and entertainment, right? when people seek you out or others like you, right? Folks who kind of do live presentations at events like this. You've also started this Engagify, right? You've built a business.
Mhm.
It's not really about magic. It's about how to engage. What's first, the chicken or the egg? Did you learn these things by being on the show floor and engaging with people, or did you kind of learn them on the side and then pull them into your on floor presence to really amplify your effects?
A bit of both. So, I mean, the entertainment, and one of the reasons you don't hear magicians talk like I do is
Yeah.
because, and we don't, if you go on Engagify.ai,
Yeah.
our website, and by the way, the AI is not artificial intelligence. It's for authentic interactions. That's what
Okay.
we say it stands for.
Good.
But if you go there, you're not going to really see the word magic. And
Okay.
just to kind of talk about that is,
Yeah.
when people hear magician, they might automatically go to a guy in a tuxedo pulling a rabbit out of a hat, cheesy, gimmicky.
Yeah.
Dana, you used the word gimmick earlier, and and so that's not what we're trying to paint, right? We're trying, so we use the word infotainer as to
Yep.
describe what it is. So it's information in an entertaining and engaging way, right? I just being a performer, you learn a lot of things because of the short feedback loop, tight feedback loop. Right.
Okay.
That idea is you said something and it was funny. Oh, that was funny. That was good. Pat, pat, pat. Right. Or they clapped or whatever. They reacted.
Yeah.
And so then you start going, oh, this is how I am. This is how I do it. You may not know exactly why it works,
Yeah.
but it works. Right. And so that's kind of that from one side. When I started studying this and looking at, oh, that's why that works. Then I started looking at other areas and other things. So I kind of came at it from both sides. One of the examples is, sometimes, and I'm going to use Dana's gimmick word again, if you don't mind, is that sometimes they say, oh, magic's too gimmicky. And really what you see there is, if you picture a triangle, and again, I'm big into drawing these things out, but a triangle is kind of a model.
Yep.
There's three sides to it. And we call this engaging elements. Whatever you do, if you can bring in these three, you're going to create more engagement around your message. Okay. So the one of them is storytelling. Okay. So how do you tell the story? And storytelling gets thrown around a lot in corporate marketing. This is our story. No, those are your messaging points. That's not a story, right? It's, if you can actually tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end, or maybe start talking, break down a case study or something. In my case, a lot of my demonstrations, they have a beginning, middle, and end, and we're talking about a journey from point A to point B. And there's an aha moment in the middle. Okay. So that's storytelling. With magic, there's wonder. And when I say wonder, I don't want to kind of go like that, but there is this sense of curiosity that is created. We're cultivating curiosity because we're doing something that is different, that is, we're not exactly sure where this is going, right?
Yep.
And when we can invoke a state of curiosity in our audience, that's a very powerful state for them to be in, to sell to, because you can disrupt incumbents, right? That, they might have thought this is the way it is. And you're like, actually, it's not. And we can say, here's how things are different now, right? And so get them to wonder, oh, how's that work? Right. So that's a good place to have them. Okay. And then, so those are the top three. And then the bottom is, there's got to be a payoff. There's got to be a twist. I said aha moment a second ago. What is that dopamine spike that comes out of this, that they go, oh, there was a payoff, right?
Yeah.
You watch, you are there for something, and then if nothing happens, I feel like I wasted my time, right?
Yeah.
And so again, like I said, those things, that we call that engaging elements, and when you kind of combine them, you get curiosity, you get attention, and you really create something memorable. Okay, so all of that is what magic does. You can do it in other ways too, but it works quite well with magic. And so that's kind of, whenever we hear, why magic? It can, and it can also symbolize a lot, right? A lot of visual metaphors that represent something that is not really, if I had three pieces of rope, different lengths, I can talk about a chart. I can talk about different size companies. I can talk about all these kind of things that can lend themselves to the situation. And whenever you use props psychologically, things that you can grab and hold in your hand, there are mirror neurons that fire watching that person do that, because you know what that feels like yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so just using props actually is an engagement tactic to make people, connect with you. So there's some, again, I'm geeking out about this stuff. I'll shut up. You will
stuff.
ask
This
one
is
of your
good stuff,
questions. It's
though.
all good. Okay.
A lot of folks that we talk to, everybody's like, what do you see? What's new? What's working out there? And, oh, I saw this, tech type of a play to attract attention, wow factor, whatever the case may be. There's a million of these things out there, whether they're like a whack-a-mole game or some sort of a video interaction or whatever. But we always, we welcome the conversation, but we always kind of have to come back to, like, you can't just have tech for tech's sake. It has to make sense. And what you're saying is ultimately the same thing, right? When you are working with a client to create a strategy on how you're going to amplify their message and bring the people in and everything, it's not like, hey, so then I pull a bunny out of my hat and then I light myself on fire. And then, it's like it's all dialed in, right? So what is that? Wasn't really on our kind of talking points here, but for folks out there who are considering, if you're an exhibitor and you're considering bringing in some live entertainment to help, what does that conversation look like? Do you start with an in-depth questionnaire to kind of go through with that exhibitor, like, what's your message? What are we trying to say? And then you start working with them to mold this overall presentation and the talking points?
Yeah, you're right. So we do have a questionnaire that we send over. We call it a message engineering questionnaire. And we've honed that over years and years, and just trying to get to the core. What are they really trying to say? And ideally, the magic number is 3, right? Just people, if we can get it down to 3 things that I'm going to say, but I'm going to say them again and again in different ways, so that it sinks into the mind and they actually will remember it, right? And if we give them a peak experience, their chances of remembering it are so much higher too, right? So what is those 3 things? Because you know what it's like with corporate marketing. There's a lot of lingo, a lot of, like, they just throw a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, would you read that in front of someone? Would you read that in front of a prospect?
What do you mean?
And it's like, no, so there is this level of being a filter, right? For how do we really talk about that? Can I put that in simple terms? We always say we got to simplify to Engagify, right? And I work in tech all the time. That needs to have content clarity. We got to bring that down to something that is so much easier to consume. And just a little more brain science for you. Our brain is 2% of our body weight, but it consumes 20% of our energy. And so whenever anything gets too complex, we get into cognitive overload, which is just overwhelm, right? It's like our brain says, no, not worth the calories. I don't want to do it, right? So we got to make it simple. We got to make it easy for them to follow along. They get it. And that's what the visual metaphors, that's what the storytelling, that's what that's all for. So to get back to your thing, they fill out the questionnaire, send it back to me. We book a clarity call where we then be able to ask more questions and say, could we say this? Could we say that? And push them a little bit on this stuff. And I mean, some companies have it down pretty good. And then some companies, they need a lot of help. So it just depends. But we need to basically answer 3 things. And this is and when we do a show, when we do a presentation, people will come up to us and my other infotainers as well. And they say, do you work for the company? Like they're confused because we talked about the company with great confidence, and we sounded like we knew our stuff, and yet we displayed a skill set that's uncommon, right? And then and my joke is always, they found me in the mailroom, like that kind of thing, right? Like, but with that, when we want to really fine tune it, it is about answering these 3 things: is how does your company, and if it's a B2B kind of thing, how do you make money or help that company save money? Your prospect. How do you save them time? And I mean, time and money is productivity, like there's the ways you interchange or interact. And then the third one is, how do you give them greater peace of mind? And really, all companies do those things. And that's what we do, is we cut through the clutter to say, how do you do those things? And that allows us to understand it at that level that is very benefit driven. Is the idea that if we want to create engagement, we have to either spike dopamine or norepinephrine. Dopamine is what's in it for me. Norepinephrine is, the stress. I want to avoid the stress, right? So we're either it's the carrot and the stick, if you will. And so we want to look at those ways of pushing those kind of engagement drivers, or those neurotransmitters. Yeah.
This is way deeper than
too deep.
How
We're
many-
doing
No.
cognitive overload.
No, this is awesome. I'm going into cognitive overload.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not- it's
Andrew,
not
And I just go,
too
oh, shiny thing.
deep at all. There are some clients that we're able to have these types of conversations with, actually, and that we even talk to like upcoming design students about, and that is, really engaging more of the human senses beyond sight, and let's say you're having someone give a presentation. Maybe you have a theater in your booth, so you've got sight and you've got sound, right? Well, maybe there's something interactive in that presentation. Like, I'm going to oversimplify just for the sake of this conversation. Maybe the presenter surprises them with something and they throw like a beach ball out the audience or something. Now there's like a hands-on tactile thing, in that sense of touch. Are you serving food? Sense of taste, sense of smell. So every one of the human senses that you can gauge, another one, you're basically powering and firing other different areas of the brain. And every time that happens, now you're really getting to harness and access learning and memorability. I mean, if I said to you right now, just as a sense of smell, think of something, a smell that when you remember, it brings you back to something when you were little. And for me, like certain smells, like my house burnt down when I was little. It's not traumatic. Like, it's fine. It's not a thing. Everyone's fine, even the pets. But like, there's certain smells. Like, I'm like, what is that smell? I'm like, oh my God, it totally reminds me of like the house fire, because a house structure fire is very different than, like, say, a bonfire, or grill fire. I mean, grandma's cookies, there's a smell, her cookies versus just somebody else's cookies. So that's just one sense of smell. So if you can do that with sounds or touch, it's just going to make your experience an experience, and that much more powerful, and really help all the big dollars you're spending on putting on this event and attending the show with your exhibit. There's much more of return on that. It's not just ROI, return on investment. There's another term I've heard lately that I try to keep in the back of my mind, which is ROE, return on the engagement portion of that. The engagement portion is really basically like throwing fuel on your event and your structure. If you can make it a memorable, impactful engagement, then everything else you've done at that event now is more meaningful.
Yeah. Dana, when he was talking about the senses, one of the things that when that really came, it really seemed true to me, was one of my clients was doing beer and bacon in the booth. And so they cranked up and they had this bacon, and on Twitter, this is back when kind of Twitter was more of in its infancy, but it was, but people were, hashtagging the event and everything. And someone was like, I smell bacon, and they don't know what booth it is, but they were like live tweeting that they were getting closer.
You're getting warmer.
Then finally finding it. Yeah, I'm getting warmer. And then finally, hey, it was booth 1402, blah, 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 whatever company, right? And just kind of like celebrating the discovery. So, there is, everything's better with bacon, right? So there's that.
Well, think about over the last few years, cookies, where yes, you could give out a cookie, right? But I don't know if you've noticed the last few years, they have these machines that can be rented. So you're actually cooking, like baking the cookie on site. That is for two purposes. One, it's going to smell. People are going to sniff it out, almost like the bacon situation. And the second part is you're serving someone a warm cookie. And a warm cookie is very much of that feeling of home and safety. Right, that's where you get a warm cookie typically is, and not only have they done it on show site, a lot of hotels have started doing that, because hotels want you to pick them and their brand and be a repeat customer. So they're serving warm cookies because you're home. They want you to feel home. It's a very powerful, if you can get someone, first, if you can evoke their curiosity, but then you can also evoke another feeling from them, that's extremely memorable and powerful.
I think, making people feel something, period, is key, right? That and I find that I have another model. I talk about the trade show triangle, and to get to the very top of the level of different categories of exhibitors. We say the top one is experiencer. They're creating experiences. Adding emotion is how you get to that level. It's not just about putting on something, but it has to have some sort of emotional quality to it. And I think companies need to sometimes give themselves permission, or kind of look themselves in the mirror and say, this is okay to do. Whenever I say emotional, it sounds like, not, that's not what I mean,
No,
but it's just like, can they feel something? And some companies are so, just,
I think it's a fear factor.
Fear factor, but they're just so cut and dry, so
Right.
buttoned up that you're kind of like, guys, I gotta loosen up just a little bit. Let's have some fun. And just even the idea of having fun, in the booth is maybe sometimes not
it's uncomfortable
embraced,
for them,
right?
right?
Yeah. So
But it's
like
to try to explain to them, you don't have to lose the personality of your brand to do something memorable. When we say make a feeling, it doesn't mean we're telling you need to be silly. Just the fact of, if you just think about just the structure itself, we'll back it all the way up just to the structure, which isn't typically moving unless there's some graphics or what have you. If I remember years ago when I first started this industry, especially in the medical industry, if you were designing an exhibit, they'd be like, well, our logo colors are blue and white, and that's because it's what everybody in the industry is, and we want the booth to be pretty, simple and plain because that's what everybody in the industry does. And I kept hearing, and for more than one client, because that's what everybody in the industry does. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's what everyone does, I'd want to be the company who does what everybody else doesn't do, because then I'm going to stand out. And it doesn't mean I need to have an inflatable chicken on top of my exhibit, because that would not make any sense with my brand or anything, unless it was like the International Poultry Expo or something. But I mean, that's the perfect opportunity to be like, oh, we can do something different, and it can still be us to stand out. And that's just starting with the exhibit. It doesn't even get to all of the wonderful things that we could brainstorm that has more of an engagement interactive element to it.
That's corporate culture for you, though, Dana. Sometimes just that, and when you're making a decision that you have to answer for, and the higher ups are going to see this, there's a lot of pressure on these people to do the right thing and everything. I was at a recent trade show where I guess I was only supposed to perform during reception hours, doing my normal thing. And that's not usually the case. I usually can just do it, throughout the show. And I did do a show a little early, and I got shut down by show management so fast because of certain rules at this show. And they said, we can't let you take attention away from other exhibitors. And I was kind of like, well, I think that's what the trade show is for, So yeah.
You're too
And
good.
there are a lot of rules and regulations, especially with pharmaceutical and some of the medical industries. And those I get, but still, I think I would still, like I said, it's cost a lot and a lot of effort for a client to go to a show. So where I always look for where's the whole, meaning I'm not breaking any rules at all, but how am I going to stand out, right? And that's when people will, they bring in us, they bring in you to brainstorm about what is the thing that's going to help really illustrate who we are, what we do in a memorable teaching way. And so from some people, it's also got a little lightheartedness. For others, their brand can't. It's just not part of their brand personality, but it doesn't mean it can't still be impactful. Even just the element of provoking curiosity, I think it's amazing to be able to provoke that sense in a person, especially where there's so much going on these days. We're all just inundated with things. It's so easy to see new ideas. So if you can surprise someone a little bit, that right there is that's a big win.
Hey, I love the back and forth between you guys. Before we go on to anything else, let's tie the two of you together and say, we've got a client. They want to design a booth and they want to leave space for some sort of an engagement, Engagify, right? We're going to hire these guys to do this thing. How, Anders, do you tend to get involved with the exhibit design process to make sure you have the space? We've identified the hot corner. Here's your reception desk. Or what do you physically need room-wise, number of square feet? And do you need counters, tables? What does that look like if we've got, again, listeners out
Yeah.
there who want to try to work something like you guys into their existing or newly designed exhibit?
Yeah, well, we try to be, I mean, we love when our clients, and it's usually the client, not the new clients, because they don't completely trust us yet, right? Like it's kind of like, we'll try you out first. Let's see. And
Yeah.
then they start listening to us, right? But once they see that, but yeah, I'm getting sent Friday PDF of booth designs, and they want our take on it, just to kind of look at things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm just going to say this to Dana, and you were talking about some of the design students earlier too, pass this on, okay? Because we see this a lot where you have that hot corner you talk about, Chris, and you put that reception desk there.
The blockade.
Yeah, the blocks it. And then they sometimes have a presentation theater behind that. And you're like, path of least resistance is so big, right? And it's like, put that theater right out on the aisle as much as possible, make it so, and then I'm talking about if you're having internal presentations and you want some seats in the booth and everything, just do not block that off, because it becomes, and I and my colleagues and people out there, I remember walking by at HIMSS last year, and I saw someone working a booth. I'm like, how's that going? Because I knew it would just be a nightmare. And they're like, oh, and so it's like, if you're going to have a theater, never block it off with a reception desk. That's just a general thing. But for us, we are pretty flexible. So if there's going to be internal presentations, meaning your people or partners are going to be presenting, we're going to want to have seating and make it an in-booth theater. Okay. Because the path of least resistance, if you're sitting, is you're going to stay sitting, right? And so when you have presenters that are not professional presenters, it's nice to have people stick around and be an audience for them, even if they're not high level, right? So that's one of those things. You get them sitting, and then you're in good shape that way. We do a lot of aisle view presentations, meaning we just need about the size of a suitcase that you would check.
Yeah.
If you laid that down flat on the floor, that's how much space we need. And we would play to the aisle. And so the safety in numbers, people feel good in the aisle. Do you ever notice they never want to cross over that carpet? So they feel good out there. So we need about that much space. And the reason I say that is we have a portable stage. They're made out of carbon fiber. Actually, they're only 8 pounds, but they support our weight. That will sit, and it's covered, and it's just black, and it kind of just is invisible. We sit that on the corner, and then we'll be able to build those crowds. And then we have to decide when the design is, okay, what's that next step? What do you want these people to do? If they're qualified, what would you want the next step to be? In tech, it's often a demo, right? So we will then lead that crowd over to a demo station, and it's nice if that demo station isn't too far away, right? Where is that next step? We can maybe get them a little bit deeper into the booth, but it's like the idea that we want to be able to move. So we try not to take up too much space. Like there's so many activations that just are hogs on space. Like I saw one at KubeCon just this year ago. It was a bartending robot, and it took up a whole 10 by 20 because they had to have all the drinks and supplies for it and this whole thing. And it's like, and it wasn't pulling a crowd either. So, actually, Chris, while I'm saying that, I've actually put together a Google Sheet thing that I call a booth activation effectiveness matrix, where I rank activations based on how much size they take. Do they build a crowd? Do they impart a message? Do they create qualified leads or just raw leads? I categorize all these activations I've seen over the years and give them a score. And so I'd be happy to share the link with that. And if you want to post it or whatever you want to do,
that'd be great.
But it's kind of makes us think about these things because, again, with booth space, you want to get most bang for your buck. And so when we're done, we can actually move our stage out of the way and you go back to your normal booth, right? So there's ways of being flexible. And sometimes we want to stage it up a little bit bigger and there's a designated space and we put in one of our bigger stages or a stage is designed for us. Yep. And that does up the booth authority, right? That this is an official thing. It feels more like, this is built right in. Yep. And so that's kind of, how we work with companies on the design. Yeah. Okay.
So less like you're just like a street performer who just happened to set up camp.
Right. Like, are you with the, where's your badge?
No, I just wandered in.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Get a little
we
can
do
for tips
brand
out front.
everything we do so
Yeah.
that we're dressed and, you know,
Okay.
the props, even like, you
Yeah.
know, I have different color, I have ropes that are the same brand as whatever the color. So yeah, we do show up very much on point, on brand, and on fire. Yeah.
Awesome. How much time do you need to get ready for something like that? So, we're encouraging people to start engaging with us 4 months in advance, 16 weeks, basically. Where do you kind of come in an ideal scenario?
Ideal scenario, we see most companies engage with us about 3 months out.
Okay.
We have done much shorter. Of course, you don't like to jam yourself up and know
Right.
that we got to
Put a plan
customize a
together.
presentation and everything.
Yeah.
But that's typical. But we can do hustle up offense with less time.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, guys, we are at right about 55 minutes, and we look to keep the toolbox to right around an hour. So this has worked out tremendously. We do like to try to cap off our conversation. And Anders, you've been tremendous. You've dropped so much knowledge and so many great ideas and so forth. But I'm going to pump you for a couple more, just because that's how we roll. A couple of takeaways you can leave our listeners with, or are there some things that you've already talked about you want to circle back, put a bow on it, and just say, if you can only do two things, like do this?
I think one of the ones, and this is just, I'm passionate about the people side of things, that we spend so much money on the booth, and another one of these models I have is that we, 85% of a budget is the booth and the booth space and all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And 10 to 15%, I'm again, 75 to 80% is the booth.
Okay.
10 to 15% is your T&E, and only 5 to 10% is spent on engagement. And so, what's the part that actually moves the needle, right?
Mhm.
Is, there's certain things you gotta have, but we got to focus on the things that really, and we talk about the gains are in the engagement. So that would be one thing I'd say, what are you doing to truly engage, right? And with that kind of tacks onto that is invest in your people. Like, my goodness, there's more trainings at companies on how to properly take vacation than there is to work a trade show booth, So that idea of making sure that it's looking at the whole situation, because we make them stop, but if we don't have those meaningful interactions, there's a big hole in our bridge across the engagement gap, and we want to have each of those bridge stones.
Does Engagify offer booth staff training as a component?
Yeah, we do. And we actually do it in person. We can do it on demand, meaning you just get a link and people can train on their way to the show, on their phone. And then we also do it virtually too. So getting the whole team together before the show and doing it that way. Yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Dana, I mean, he's covered a whole lot of stuff. I know we could talk for a couple more hours. You guys have certainly found a happy place, comparing notes between designers and engagement and so forth. Is there anything that you want to kind of end with before we ask how to best reach our friend Anders?
No, I do love, though, that Anders has that same sort of philosophy about the engagement element. Obviously, myself and a lot of other people in our industry do. I would just encourage clients to really think about that when you're thinking about all the other parts of the exhibit. Maybe you carve out a bucket specifically for the engagement, whatever that engagement might be, and I don't know. I just feel like it's such a powerful tool, no matter how you slice and dice it, that it shouldn't be like a last minute thing. And from the design side, when I'm thinking about the structure and the strategy for the show and the whole program, like if we know that a client's going to have someone like Anders there and engaged, we'd like to know that as soon as possible, so we can make sure that the exhibit, not only the structure, but the messaging can really support it and help amplify it in any way that we can.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I want to add one more thing too. If you're watching this and you're an event manager and you've never been to Exhibitor Live or heard of the Certified Trade Show Marketing designation, get into that. If you liked any of the stuff I said, I do a bunch of sessions at that show and you'll be able to learn with me in person. So check out Exhibitor Live.
Yeah, I'll have to see you there this year, Anders.
Awesome.
There we go. We should probably, take his class. Before you get in. It's very sought after. All right. Anders, how do people best reach you?
Yeah, well, they can find me here on LinkedIn. My name's right down below, and it's just LinkedIn, Anders Boulanger. Or you can check out our website, engagify.ai. And then the book has its own page on there, but you can go to engage-first.com. And on it, you can download a PDF on 4 ways to be more engaging. And if you do buy the book, you get a free presentation training that we offer as well. So that's all on engage-first.com.
Nice.
Okay. Adding value here is like crazy. So, hey guys, this has been awesome. I feel like our level of a guest has just been climbing up, and Anders, I think you really brought a lot to the table. Again, making sure that people understand that being a trade show magician is really very little about being a
Infotainer.
magician.
Infotainer.
Infotainer, right? That's the point, right?
Right.
It's like I'm not really a magician. What I am is a marketing strategist wrapped up as somebody who knows how to present, confidently engage people, like all of that stuff. That's all part of what you guys bring to the table, and that is that's awesome and great. Kind of sneak peek, or just a peek behind the curtain at kind of how people are chunking up their trade show budgets, and are they really allocating the proper amount of budget towards the things that do move the needle. And on our end, we see that the services are way bigger than they used to be. We used to carve out 30-40% for services. Now we got to go to like 60%, which means that we're pulling pieces out of the booth in order to try to meet budgets. But it's all a balancing act. We got to work together to make sure that people are, or that companies are getting the ROI and the ROE that they need from the shows, because if they don't, then they're going to stop going to shows. So all that stuff. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, this was live. Now it's going to be available on YouTube, as well as still here at LinkedIn at the very same link. And then we show up on your favorite podcast platforms within a couple days as well. So cheers to everybody. Hey, Rich Keefe, how you doing? Thanks. Be good, everybody. Have a